Today's Nonsense Wars production features my 1:350 scale Japanese battleship Kongo. I showed this on the side in the October Revolution video, and that video seems popular enough that I want to cover the older model. Like the October, the Kongo was built in the early 1910s, but modernized several times before World War II. She subsequently saw heavy service in the Pacific before being sunk by submarine in late 1944. I became interested in naval history after I started playing World of Warships. I liked the Kongo in that game and the Kongo in Kantai Collection, and I decided to build the ship when I didn't see any prior 1:350 models done in LEGO. I had already built several 1:48 trains at that point, but I had never tried a ship in any scale. Nonetheless, I approached it in the same way as with trains. I made a scaling drawing, and I drew cross-sections of the ship in brick. Very early in the design process, I decided to make the sides studs out and the superstructure studs up, and accordingly, I traced the footprint of the hull in profile and the outline of the deck in overhead. I talked about the trade-offs of said architectural decision in the October video. Still, I started by making a waterline model. I would initially avoid the apparent complexity of shaping the lower hull, and the rest could stand alone. Even then, I only had a top view of the entire ship, so I could only scale the top layer of the hull. I had to eyeball the shape at the waterline and below using pictures of physical and digital models. Logically, I designed the superstructure after the upper hull and the decks. I cartooned this part of the model much more than the other parts, and hence found it much easier to do. To be fair, a single 1x1 plate occupies more volume than several men at this scale, so I literally can't explicitly model a lot of the smaller features anyway. This assortment of parts should still broadly resemble the actual pagoda mast, etc. Also, like with trains, I modeled almost all of the exterior before dealing with the interior. In this case, all of the structural elements. The ship already has some rigidity due to the studs out hull, but I still need framing to tie it all together. I originally settled on a Technic frame, but later decided that a system implementation would integrate better with the exterior and mate better with the lower hull. The waterline model took several months to design, but when I finished it, I felt confident enough to immediately start on the lower hull. As I said, I did not have cross-sections of this part, so I had to model it by eye using photos of someone's physical model and screen caps of the World of Warships virtual model. I had the most trouble with the complex curves of the bow and stern, especially around the propellers and rudders. The finished model, top and bottom, contains 1,850 parts and measures 80 studs long and 12 studs wide. Since I hadn't built a ship before, I focused on just finishing rather than implementing any motorization, but the main battery can pivot and elevate, as can the secondary antennas and some of the cranes, etc. Like the October, the top and bottom can also separate easily, such that the waterline model can display on its own. Speaking of display, I also built some accessories to go with the ship. I mentioned before that I built a brickheads of Kantai Collection Kongo but I also built a Japanese-style tea tray on which to present the two as a single piece. I don't know if all that contributed to the ship winning War is All Brick at Bricks by the Bay 2018, but let's just pretend it did. As with trains again, I tried to build the ships to a common scale such that I can look at the relative size of the actual prototypes. Here you can see the Kongo, the October, a 1 to 350 scale Titanic, and a 1 to 350 scale Fletcher. The plastic models, of course, have more fidelity than the Lego models, but the differences in overall size and shape should still come through. I did a similar comparison with virtual locomotive models in the U30 video. I will probably end up covering the non-Lego models here at some point, so stay tuned for those. But on that note, this is the end of the video, so have a nice day.